The investor meeting was going smoothly until Evan handed me a stack of documents to sign. "Just standard quarterly reports," he said casually, that charming smile plastered across his face. I flipped through the pages mechanically, my pen hovering over the signature line. Then I froze. These weren't quarterly reports. They were divorce papers. My hands started shaking as I read my own name, saw my signature already there, notarized, dated, official. But I never signed these. The conference room fell silent. 20 investors stared at me, watching my face drain of color. Evan leaned back in his chair, perfectly composed, like he'd just handed me grocery receipts. My throat closed up. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what I was seeing. The man I'd loved for 8 years, the man I'd built a business with, had just handed me proof that he'd already divorced me on paper, without my knowledge. My humiliation was complete, calculated, and very public. I looked up at him, searching for some explanation, some mistake. He just smiled, that cold, professional smile. The drive home was torture. Evan sat in the passenger seat, talking about dinner plans like nothing had happened. "Maybe that Italian place you like," he suggested, scrolling through his phone. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, knuckles white from gripping too hard. Every word he spoke felt like acid in my ears. How could he sit there so calmly after what just happened? I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to crash the car into a wall just to feel something other than this numbness. But fear kept me silent. Fear of what he'd already done. Fear of what else he was hiding. At a red light, I reached into the glove compartment for tissues. My fingers brushed against paper. I pulled it out slowly, my heart hammering. Another copy of divorce papers. Unsigned. But the date at the top made my blood run cold. 6 months ago. He'd been planning this for half a year. While I kissed him goodnight, while I made our breakfast, while I trusted him completely, he was plotting my erasure. Walking into our house felt different that night. I noticed details I'd overlooked before. Our wedding photo was missing from the living room wall. The spot where it hung for 7 years was now just blank cream paint. Fresh paint. The nail holes were patched and smoothed over like our marriage had never existed. I stood there staring at that empty space, feeling like I was disappearing too. "Evan, where's our wedding photo?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He glanced up from his laptop, shrugged casually. "Just for decorating. That wall needed updating." His tone was so dismissive, so practiced. Like he'd rehearsed this exact conversation. I nodded slowly, pretending to accept his answer. But when he left for his evening run, I went straight to his study. His desk drawer was locked, but I knew where he kept the spare key, inside a hollowed-out book on the shelf. My hands shook as I opened the drawer. Property deeds. All in his name alone. The house we bought together, the vacation condo, even the car I drove daily, all transferred to Evan Grant only. I sat on the floor of his study, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, and my mind drifted back to where we started. 8 years ago, we were 2 ambitious hustlers in a cramped Chicago apartment, building Grant Financial Consulting from nothing. I managed the books while Evan charmed clients. We were partners in every sense, equals, lovers, dreamers. I gave him my passwords, my trust, my entire financial future. He used to hold my face and promise, "You'll never have to worry about money again. I'll take care of everything." I believed him. God, I believed every word. Now those same files I created, those passwords I shared, the systems I built, he'd weaponized them all against me. The flashback felt like watching someone else's life, some naive girl who didn't know she was building her own cage. That girl was gone now. The woman sitting on this floor was someone different. Someone harder. Someone who wouldn't be erased so easily. I heard his key in the front door and quickly put everything back. The next morning, I scheduled an appointment with our company accountant, Marcus Chen. I'd known Marcus for years. He seemed honest, reliable, nervous around conflict. When I walked into his small office, he barely made eye contact. "Just want to verify some quarterly numbers," I said cheerfully, placing a folder on his desk. "Everything looks accurate from my end, but you know how audits can be." Marcus shifted uncomfortably, clicking through spreadsheets without really looking at them. Everything's fine, Olivia. Standard offshore adjustments, nothing unusual. His voice cracked slightly on the word offshore. I nodded, smiled, pretended not to notice his anxiety. But my phone was recording in my purse, capturing every nervous word. Offshore adjustments to where exactly? I asked casually. He mumbled something about routine transfers and tax optimization. I thanked him and left, my heart racing. That night, I replayed the recording 3 times. On the third listen, I caught it. One sentence Marcus thought he'd said too quietly: transfer to Brooks International. The name meant nothing to me. Yet, I spent the entire weekend digging into Brooks International. Google searches led nowhere. It was a ghost company, barely existing on paper. But I had access to our company's shared drive, files Evan hadn't thought to block me from yet. I searched Brooks in every folder, every document, every archived email. Finally, I found it, a hidden folder titled O. Grant Legal. My own initials. My stomach dropped as I opened it. Scanned divorce filings. Multiple versions, all with my signature forged across the bottom. Documents showing asset transfers, property deeds, bank statements. And at the center of everything, Sienna Brooks, Evan's executive assistant. His ex-girlfriend from college who he'd hired last year despite my concerns. I'd pushed down my jealousy, trusted him when he said it was just business. Now here she was, her name on shell companies, her signature on transfers, her fingerprints all over the systematic theft of my life. I took screenshots of everything, uploaded them to a private cloud, and deleted my search history. Then I went downstairs and made dinner like nothing had changed. That evening, I played my role perfectly. The dutiful wife. I set the table with our good dishes, lit candles, asked about his day. Evan talked enthusiastically about expansion plans and potential investors. We could open a New York office next year, he said, pouring wine. I nodded along, smiled at the right moments, even laughed at his jokes. All while texting my friend Rebecca under the table. Need lawyer referral. Urgent. Confidential. She responded immediately with a name, Maya Torres. As Evan launched into another story about impressing some hedge fund manager, I researched Maya on my phone. Specialized in financial deception and hidden assets. Perfect. I was scheduling a consultation when Evan suddenly stopped talking. The silence made me look up. He was staring at me, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned across the table, his voice dropping low and cold. I know you've been snooping, Olivia. My blood turned to ice. I forced my face to stay calm. Snooping? In our own company files? He didn't answer, just watched me with those calculating eyes. The next morning, Evan cornered me in the kitchen before I could leave for my appointment. His tone was casual, but his words were sharp. Stay out of business matters you don't understand. You'll only embarrass yourself. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a warning, maybe even a threat. I wanted to throw my coffee in his face, to scream that I understood perfectly. Instead, I nodded meekly. Of course. I didn't mean to overstep. He kissed my forehead like I was a child who'd learned her lesson, then grabbed his briefcase and left. The moment his car pulled away, I released the breath I'd been holding. My hands shook with suppressed rage. He thought he'd intimidated me into submission. He had no idea he'd just confirmed everything. I was about to head out when I noticed his phone on the kitchen counter. He'd forgotten it. The screen was unlocked, a message notification still visible. From Sienna, funds moved. She won't find them. I took a photo of the screen with my own phone, then carefully placed his back exactly where he'd left it. Let him think he was untouchable. Let him feel safe. That made what came next so much sweeter. Maya Torres's office was in a sleek downtown building with glass walls and modern art. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. I laid out everything. The forged divorce papers, the hidden accounts, Marcus's confession, the texts from Sienna. Maya studied each document carefully, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she leaned back and smiled. Not a friendly smile. A predatory one. He's divorcing you without your knowledge or consent, she said slowly, using forged documents to steal marital assets. That's fraud, identity theft, and about 6 other felonies. My heart soared. Can we stop him? Maya's smile widened. Stop him? Olivia, we're going to make him wish he'd filed honestly. She slid a flash drive across her desk. You'll need this. Install the program on your work computer. It'll copy every file, every email, every digital fingerprint he's left. Can you do that without him knowing? I picked up the flash drive, felt its weight in my palm. This tiny thing was a weapon. Yes, I said firmly. I can do that. Over the next week, I became a ghost in my own life. At the office, I acted normal, pleasant, professional, unremarkable. But every time Evan left for a meeting, I was at my computer, transferring files to Maya's encrypted drive. Financial records, emails between Evan and Sienna, offshore account statements, property transfers. Everything. My heart raced every time I heard footsteps in the hallway, expecting to be caught. But nobody paid attention to me. I'd become invisible, exactly what Evan wanted. That invisibility was now my greatest weapon. One afternoon, buried deep in Evan's archived emails, I found something that made my stomach drop. A calendar appointment scheduled for next week, confidential signing, Zurich, EG, and SB. Zurich. Where people hid money they didn't want found. Evan was planning something big, something final. I forwarded the email to Maya immediately. Her response came back in seconds. Get me everything by Friday. We move Monday. I smiled grimly at my screen. Monday couldn't come fast enough. Something shifted in me during those days of quiet investigation. I stopped crying when Evan stayed late at the office. I stopped checking his phone or wondering if he was with Sienna. I stopped being the heartbroken wife. I became something else, something colder, sharper, more dangerous. I upgraded my wardrobe, buying sleek suits that made me look powerful instead of invisible. I changed my tone at the office, speaking with authority instead of asking permission. People noticed. I walked through meetings like a ghost returned for justice, and Evan's employees watched me with confused respect. Even Evan seemed unsettled. You look different, he commented one morning, studying me. I smiled. Just taking your advice about confidence. He didn't look reassured. That afternoon, reviewing bank statements Maya had recovered, I found the final proof I needed. My own digital signature on a joint account withdrawal, $2 million, gone in a single transfer. He'd stolen my signature, my identity, my money. But he'd made one critical mistake. The account was opened using my initials, which meant legally, according to banking law, I had claim to everything in it. Maya called me into her office with news. Your husband is brilliant and stupid at the same time, she said, spreading documents across her conference table. He had millions in offshore accounts and shell companies. But he used your initials, OG, to open most of them. For tax purposes, he needed your identity attached. He probably thought you'd never find out. I stared at the evidence, my heart pounding. What does that mean legally? Maya's smile was sharp as broken glass. It means those accounts? They're technically yours. You're the named party, even if the signature was forged. We can prove he committed fraud by using your identity without permission. But more importantly, we can claim every dollar as misappropriated marital assets. I felt dizzy with the possibility. All of it. Every last cent, Maya confirmed. He tried to hide your money from you. Instead, he just handed us the key to take his. I laughed, a short bitter sound. So, what do? Maya pulled out another document. We file for asset misrepresentation instead of divorce. Let him think you're still in the dark. Then we strike. Evan hosted a business dinner that Friday night. Important investors and city officials gathered in a private restaurant room. I played the supportive wife, smiling and making small talk while my mind spun with secrets. During the toast, Evan raised his glass high. To fresh beginnings and new partnerships, he announced, his eyes avoiding mine. I clinked my glass against his, leaning close enough that only he could hear. You have no idea how fresh it's about to get. His smile faltered just slightly. I moved away before he could respond, rejoining the conversation with the banker's wife. 10 minutes later, Evan's phone buzzed. I watched from across the table as he glanced at the screen, his face going pale. An alert from his bank, pending audit, not authorized by account holder. His hand shook slightly as he put the phone down. Our eyes met across the table. He looked confused, maybe even worried. I just smiled and took another sip of wine. Let him wonder. Let him panic. Monday was coming, and with it, everything he'd tried to hide. The elevator doors were closing when Sienna's hand shot through, stopping them. She stepped in, and we were suddenly alone in the small space. Her designer perfume was overwhelming as she turned to face me. "I know what you're doing," she said coldly. "Digging around in files that don't concern you." I looked at her calmly, this woman who'd helped steal my life. She was beautiful in that polished way, perfect hair, perfect clothes, perfect mask of superiority. I smiled slowly. "Tell Evan I said he should check his Zurich balance." Her smirk faltered. "What?" "His Zurich account," I repeated, enunciating clearly. "Tell him to check it. Soon." The elevator reached my floor. I stepped out, leaving her standing there with confusion replacing her confidence. That evening, I heard through Marcus, who was now secretly feeding me information, that Evan had called Sienna screaming. "Who else knows?" He'd shouted, loud enough that people in the next office heard. Sienna apparently had no answers. Good. Let them turn on each other. Let them panic and make mistakes. That's how empires crumble from the inside out. Maya arranged what she called a mediation meeting about tax clarification. She'd sent official-looking notices to both Evan and our company accountant, professional and boring enough that Evan wouldn't suspect anything. When we arrived at Maya's conference room, Evan was already there, confident and slightly annoyed. "Can we make this quick?" he asked, checking his watch. "I have real meetings today." I sat down quietly, playing the role of confused wife who needed tax issues explained slowly. Maya began with basic questions, routine, dull, exactly what Evan expected. He answered with barely concealed impatience, clearly thinking this was a waste of his time. Then, 30 minutes in, Maya's tone shifted. "Mr. Grant, I'm confused about these offshore transfers. Can you explain the purpose of Brooks International?" Evan's jaw tightened. "That's proprietary business information." "Is it?" Maya pulled out a document. "Because according to this sealed subpoena I filed this morning, every hidden asset, every shell company, every offshore account will be traced by court order. Starting today." The color drained from Evan's face. "What?" I watched him process what was happening, watched the exact moment he realized he'd been trapped. 3 days later, Marcus appeared at my apartment door. His face was pale, sweating despite the cool evening. "I can't keep lying," he said, practically falling through the doorway. "He made me transfer your shares, forge documents, create fake tax records. I could lose my license. I could go to jail." I led him to the couch, handed him water, let him catch his breath. My phone was recording in my pocket. "Tell me everything, Marcus." From the beginning. He talked for 20 minutes, explaining how Evan had pressured him, threatened him, promised him bonuses for silence. How Sienna had provided the shell company structures. How they'd systematically moved my assets into accounts I couldn't access. I listened, asked gentle questions, watched him unravel. Then Evan burst through my door. I'd apparently forgotten to lock it after Marcus arrived. "What are you doing here?" Evan demanded, staring at Marcus. Marcus froze like a deer in headlights. I stood slowly, calmly. "He's telling me the truth. Something you should try sometime." Evan's face twisted with rage, but before he could speak, my phone rang. Maya's name on the screen. I answered on speaker. "Audit complete." Maya's voice filled the room. "We have everything." Evan turned on me, his mask finally crumbling. "You're trying to destroy me," he shouted, his voice breaking with rage and fear. "Everything I built. You're trying to take it all." I looked at him, really looked at the man I'd loved, the stranger he'd become. My voice was steady, cold, final. "No, Evan. You did that yourself." He stepped toward me, and Marcus actually moved between us protectively. "You forged divorce papers," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "You stole marital assets. You committed fraud using my identity. You destroyed this marriage, this business, everything we built. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth." Evan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then threw it across the room. "You've frozen my accounts." Maya froze accounts containing stolen assets, I corrected. "Your accounts, the legitimate ones, are fine. If you have any." His face contorted with realization. Everything he'd hidden, everything he thought was safely tucked away, was now locked behind legal walls. Marcus slipped out during the confrontation, leaving us alone. Evan stood there, breathing hard. "I underestimated you," he finally said. I smiled without humor. "That was your first mistake." The court summons arrived via courier the next morning. Evan laughed when he opened it, a harsh sound without joy. "You think this scares me? You think some paperwork changes anything?" He tossed the documents on the kitchen counter and left for the office. 2 hours later, his credit card declined at lunch. Then his backup card. Then his business card. I heard about it from 3 different people. Apparently, he'd made quite a scene at an expensive restaurant with clients. The first frozen account hit him like a physical blow. By evening, his phone was ringing constantly, banks, credit companies, business partners all calling with questions. He tried to brazen through it, making calls, pulling strings, using his charm and connections. Nothing worked. By midnight, Sienna quit. Just sent a short email, effective immediately. She'd seen the writing on the wall and jumped ship. But here's the thing about rats leaving sinking ships. They sometimes take evidence with them. Maya called at 1 in the morning. "Sienna Brooks just contacted me. Says she has financial files. She wants immunity in exchange for testimony." I sat up in bed. "Can you do that?" "Already done," Maya replied. "She's singing like a canary." The news broke on a Wednesday morning. Local CEO under investigation for concealed assets. The article was professional, carefully worded, legally airtight. It mentioned no names directly, but included enough details that everyone in Chicago's financial world knew exactly who it meant. I stayed silent, made no statements, posted nothing on social media. But Evan's phone exploded with calls from panicking investors. I watched from my apartment. I'd moved out 2 weeks earlier as his life imploded in real time. Partners distanced themselves. Business deals evaporated. 3 board members resigned before lunch. By afternoon, Evan was in Maya's office, his expensive lawyer trailing behind him. I wasn't there, but Maya recorded everything. "I want to negotiate," Evan said, his voice strained. Maya looked up calmly. "Negotiate what?" "Settlement terms. Asset division. Whatever she wants." Maya smiled. "That's between you and your wife. I just represent her legal interests, which, as of this morning, include criminal fraud charges if you don't cooperate fully." There was silence on the recording. Then Evan's voice, quiet and desperate, "Can I talk to her?" "To Olivia?" Maya's response was simple, "Talk to your wife." Evan called me 6 times that evening. I blocked his number after the 3rd voicemail. The mediation hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in a downtown courthouse. Cold fluorescent lights, gray walls, the smell of old coffee and legal documents. Evan sat across from me, flanked by his lawyer, not his usual high-powered attorney, but someone cheaper who'd take a case already lost. I sat next to Maya, calm and composed in a navy suit. The mediator called the session to order and Maya began. She laid out evidence methodically, emails showing conspiracy between Evan and Sienna, forged signatures on divorce documents, bank statements proving systematic theft of marital assets. Evan's lawyer kept interjecting, but each objection fell flat against the mountain of proof. When Maya presented the offshore account statements, all bearing my initials as the account holder, Evan's lawyer actually went pale. "Your Honor," Maya concluded, "Mr. Grant attempted to divorce his wife without her knowledge using forged documents, while simultaneously stealing and hiding marital assets in accounts bearing her name. We're requesting full asset recovery and criminal fraud investigation." The mediator reviewed the documents silently. Finally, he looked up. "Every concealed asset is hereby declared property of Mrs. Grant pending fraud verification. Mr. Grant's access to all joint accounts is frozen immediately." Evan's empire collapsed like a house of cards in a windstorm. By Monday, 3 more board members had resigned. By Wednesday, major clients were pulling their investments. The Chicago Tribune ran a feature, Fall of a Financial Giant. Sienna testified in a sealed deposition, explaining in detail how she'd helped Evan hide assets, forge documents, and plan my legal erasure. She produced emails, texts, recorded phone calls. Apparently, she'd been protecting herself all along, keeping insurance in case Evan turned on her. Smart woman. Turns out he'd promised her a percentage of the hidden assets. When she realized the assets would be seized, she decided testimony was worth more than loyalty. Evan called me from an unknown number one night. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Olivia. His voice was barely a whisper. I just want to talk. Please. 5 minutes. My finger hovered over the red button. There's nothing left to say, Evan. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I hung up and blocked the new number too. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't rebuild trust or replace stolen years. Sorry was just a word he'd learned too late. I walked through the office one last time. Our office, except it wasn't ours anymore. The space felt hollow, echoing with memories of late nights and early dreams. Evan's corner office was empty, his personal items boxed up by security. The company plaque in the lobby had been changed while I was in court. It used to read Grant and Company. Now it read, Grant Financial. My name. My company. My fresh start. I found a letter on my old desk, in an envelope marked simply Olivia. Sienna's handwriting. I debated throwing it away unopened, but something made me read it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, it began. I don't deserve it. But you should know he didn't do this for love of me or anyone else. He did it for greed. Pure, simple greed. He wanted to be seen as self-made, not supported by his wife. He wanted your money without acknowledging your contribution. I helped him because I was weak and stupid. You're stronger than both of us combined. I hope you know that. I folded the letter, tucked it in my bag. It didn't change anything, but somehow it helped. Knowing this wasn't about me being insufficient. It was about Evan being empty. The final hearing was scheduled for a cold November morning. I wore a gray suit and minimal makeup, wanting to look professional and unmoved. Evan sat on the opposite side of the courtroom, hollow-eyed and thin. He'd aged years and months. The judge reviewed the final paperwork, fraud charges filed, asset recovery complete, divorce finalized on legitimate legal grounds this time. Every hidden account, every shell company, every piece of property Evan had tried to steal was now legally, permanently mine. The judge spoke with formal authority. The court finds sufficient evidence of fraud, identity theft, and asset concealment. Mrs. Grant is awarded full ownership of all marital assets and sole ownership of Grant Financial Consulting. Mr. Grant will face separate criminal proceedings. Evan sat there, realizing the full irony of his situation. The woman he'd tried to erase now owned everything he'd tried to hide. He'd gambled everything on his own cleverness and lost spectacularly. When the judge asked if I had any statement, I looked at Evan and said simply, I hope you learn from this. Then I signed the final papers and walked out of the courtroom without looking back. That evening, I sat in my new apartment, a bright space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. I pulled out my journal, something Maya had suggested for processing everything. I wrote slowly, carefully, you don't need revenge when truth does it better. You don't need to destroy someone who's already destroyed themselves. You just need courage to stand up, gather evidence, and let justice work. I closed the journal and walked to my fireplace. The original forged divorce papers, the ones Evan had handed me in that humiliating investor meeting, were in my bag. I pulled them out, these documents that had started everything. One by one, I fed them to the flames. The paper curled and blackened, signatures disappearing in smoke. Watching them burn felt like releasing weight I'd been carrying for months. My phone rang. Maya. Final confirmation just came through, she said. Total asset transfer complete. Everything's in your name now. I thanked her, promised to call tomorrow, and hung up. Then I stood at my window, watching the city lights sparkle in the darkness, feeling truly free for the first time in years. Reporters were waiting outside the courthouse the next morning when I arrived for the final press statement. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, voices shouting questions. Maya had advised me to say nothing, but I knew I needed to speak. Just once. For every woman who'd been erased, dismissed, betrayed by someone they trusted. I stopped on the courthouse steps, the morning sun warm on my face. Silence fell as cameras focused. My husband hid my divorce papers, I said clearly, calmly. He forged my signature, stole marital assets, and tried to erase me from the company we built together. But he couldn't hide his guilt. And he couldn't hide his accounts. A reporter shouted a question, but I was already moving. Down the steps, through the crowd, toward the waiting car. Maya walked beside me, protective and proud. I didn't answer more questions, didn't pose for photos, didn't give them the drama they wanted. I just walked away, calm, victorious, untouchable. As the car pulled away from the courthouse, I looked back one last time. The building where my old life ended and my new one began. Then I faced forward toward everything waiting ahead. And I smiled.